I live alone. I have repeated that sentence to myself for years, not because I need to remember it, but because it is my armor. It is a verbal talisman I use to ward off the chaos of the outside world. In the hollowed-out aftermath of a divorce that felt more like a slow-motion car crash, I needed a space that was surgically silent. I needed walls that didn't vibrate with someone else's laughter, floors that didn't creak under someone else's weight, and a kitchen where the only shadows belonged to me. This apartment, located at the end of a weary, red-carpeted hallway on the third floor of the St. Jude complex, was my fortress of isolation. The building was a relic of the late 70s, heavy concrete, thick oak doors, and windows that seemed to squint at the world outside. The tenants were mostly elderly, people who moved like slow-rolling fog and spoke in whispers, if they spoke at all. No children, no barking dogs, no sudden parties. The silence here wasn't just an absence of noise. It was a physical presence, thick and comforting, like a heavy wool blanket. Every night I performed the same ritual. It was more than a habit. It was a ceremony of control. I would walk to the front door, the soles of my feet sticking slightly to the linoleum. I would turn the handle to ensure it was locked. Then I would engage the heavy brass deadbolt. Thunk. A solid, reassuring sound. Finally, the security chain. Slid. Click. In the bedroom, I left the door cracked open exactly 4 inches. I told myself it was for airflow, but deep down, I knew it was for the sight line. From my pillow, I could see a vertical sliver of the hallway leading to the front door. If anything moved in the darkness of my sanctuary, I would see it before it saw me. I went to bed that night at 11:45 p.m. The air was still, the street noise outside muffled by a light rain. No alcohol, no sleeping pills. Just the honest, bone-deep fatigue of a man who had spent the day staring at spreadsheets. I closed my eyes and the darkness swallowed me whole. The transition from deep sleep to total wakefulness was instantaneous. One moment I was drifting in the black void of unconsciousness. The next, my eyes were wide open, fixed on the ceiling. There was no grogginess, no "where am I" confusion. It was as if a silent alarm had gone off inside my skull. My heart was steady, but my skin felt electric, every hair on my arms standing at attention. The room felt occupied, not by a person, but by a weight. The air felt pressurized, as if the volume of the room had suddenly decreased. I didn't move my body. I only moved my eyes. On the nightstand, the digital clock glowed with a predatory intensity. The red numbers cut through the gloom, casting long, bloody shadows across the sheets. 3:22 a.m. The numbers felt wrong. They didn't feel like a measurement of time. They felt like a countdown that had just reached 0. I stared at them until they blurred, the red light seeping into my vision. The building was silent, but it was a wrong kind of silence. In an old structure like St. Jude, there is a constant symphony of decay. The sigh of the elevator cables, the clinking of the water pipes, the distant muffled cough of a neighbor. Tonight, all of it had vanished. It was as if the world outside my walls had been erased, leaving me in a vacuum. And then, the sound arrived. Tap. A single soft strike against the heavy oak of my front door. It was the sound of a knuckle meeting wood, not a knuckles wrapped in fist knock, but the delicate tap of a single finger. I held my breath. My heart, previously calm, began to accelerate, a low drumbeat thudding in my ears. Tap, tap, 2 more. Exactly the same volume, exactly the same spacing. It wasn't the sound of someone in distress. It was the sound of someone checking to see if a vessel was empty. I sat up, the springs of the mattress groaning. The sound felt deafening in the vacuum of the room. Through the 4-inch gap of my bedroom door, the hallway was a throat of pure shadow. The sliver of light from the street lamp outside barely reached the base of the front door. "Hello?" I whispered. My voice didn't carry. It felt like the air was absorbing the sound before it could travel. I cleared my throat, forcing a bolder tone. "Who is it? It's 3 in the morning." Silence. Long, agonizing seconds where I could hear the blood rushing through my temples. Then a voice drifted through the gap. "I'm sorry to bother you," it said. It was the voice of a child, a boy, perhaps 7 or 8 years old. It was a high, clear treble, shivering with a rhythmic tremor that suggested he was standing in a draft. "I can't find my way back," the voice added, "and I'm so cold." A wave of conflicting emotions crashed over me. The protective instinct, the one that had never been used since my wife and I decided not to have children, flared up. A child? In this building? At this hour? I swung my legs out of bed. The floorboards were frigid, an unnatural cold that seemed to seep through the wood from the basement below. I stood in the doorway of my bedroom, staring down the dark throat of the hallway. "Where are your parents, son?" I asked. My voice was softer now, modulated by pity. "They went ahead," the boy replied. "They told me to wait here. They said the person in 304 was kind. They said you'd let me in." I froze. My apartment was 304. "Who are your parents?" I asked, my hand gripping the doorframe so hard my knuckles turned white. "They're waiting in the car," the voice said, "but the car is so far away, and the hallway is getting darker. Please. I just want to sit by the heater." I took a step forward, then another. I was halfway down the hall when a thought struck me, a cold, jagged shard of logic that pierced through my sympathy. The front door of the building required a key fob. The elevator required a code after 11 p.m. How did a 7-year-old child bypass 2 layers of security to stand at the very end of a dead-end hallway on the 3rd floor? And more importantly, why didn't I hear the elevator? Why didn't I hear the heavy fire door at the end of the hall swing shut? "There are no children in this building," I said, my voice hardening. I stopped 5 feet from the door. "I'm going to call the night warden. Stay right there. Don't move." "No." The word was a whip crack. The shivering in the boy's voice was gone. The politeness was gone. It was replaced by a flat, demanding tone that didn't belong in a young throat. "Don't call anyone. Just open the door. A little bit. I can fit through a small space. I'm very thin." I backed away, my heel catching on a rug. "I'm not opening the door." "You have to," the voice said. "It's 3:25 now. The time is moving. You're losing your chance to be the kind person they said you were." "Who said?" I yelled. "Who is they?" "The ones who watched you move in," the voice replied. "The ones who watched you lock your door every night and think you were safe. We've been waiting for a night when the silence was just right." I reached into my pocket. My phone was there. I always kept it charged on the nightstand, but I must have grabbed it in a daze. My fingers were slick with sweat as I swiped the screen. I didn't call the police. Not yet. I needed to see. So 6 months ago, after a series of mail thefts in the lobby, I had installed a Peephole Pro, a tiny, high-definition camera that replaced the standard brass eyelet in the door. It was connected to my Wi-Fi and featured a night vision mode. I opened the app. The loading circle spun. Connecting. My heart was a frantic hammer. Connecting. The image flickered to life. The hallway was rendered in shades of ghostly green and charcoal gray. The camera's infrared sensors illuminated the space directly in front of my door. There was no child. In the center of the frame stood a figure. It was the height of a child, yes, but its proportions were nightmarish. It wore a heavy, tattered wool coat that seemed to hang off a frame of jagged sticks. Its arms were too long, the fingers ending in blunt, gray nubs that were currently pressed against the wood of my door. But it was the head that made me lose my breath. It had no hair. The skin was pulled tight over a skull that was slightly too large for its body. It had no nose, only two vertical slits. And its eyes, they weren't eyes. They were two pits of absolute light-drinking blackness. The creature was leaning forward, its forehead resting against the door. It wasn't looking at the door. It was tilted upward, staring directly into the lens of the camera. It knew I was watching. I scrolled down frantically to the recent activity tab. 2:58 a.m. The motion sensor triggers. The video shows the hallway empty for 3 seconds. Then the creature simply unfolds from the corner where the wall meets the ceiling. It drops to the floor with a silent, heavy thud and walks, stiff-legged like a marionette, to my door. 3:09 a.m. The creature begins to mimic sounds. In the video, I can see its throat bulging. It emits the sound of a distant siren, then a dog barking, then, finally, the soft, shivering voice of the boy. It practices the words "I'm cold" over and over, its mouth moving in a way that doesn't match the human phonemes. 3:22 a.m. The creature stops practicing. It presses its ear to the door. It waits for the exact moment I wake up. On the screen, in real time, the creature's mouth opened. It didn't have teeth. It had a row of black, needle-like ridges. "You're looking at the phone, David," it said. The sound came from the hallway, but it also felt like it came from inside my own head. It used my name. "I can see the light of the screen under the door," the creature whispered. "It's a pretty light. Why don't you show it to me?" I dropped the phone. It hit the floor with a crack, the screen shattering but staying lit. "Go away," I screamed. I was no longer a man in a fortress. I was a cornered animal. "I have a gun," I lied. "I'll shoot through the door." The creature laughed. It was a horrible, bubbling sound like water boiling in a lead pipe. "You don't have a gun, David. You have a divorce decree, a collection of lonely books, and a heart that is currently beating 142 times per minute. I can hear every valve opening and closing. It sounds like a ticking clock, and clocks eventually stop." The doorknob began to turn. It was a slow, agonizing rotation. I watched the metal latch retreat into the door frame. I had locked it, but the creature wasn't using a key. The brass was groaning, the metal literally deforming under the pressure of those gray, nubbed fingers. Snap. The internal mechanism of the lock shattered. The door creaked open an inch. The security chain held. It pulled taut, the metal links groaning as they bit into the wood of the frame. "Just a little more," the voice said. The voice changed again. The child's treble vanished. It became the voice of Sarah, my ex-wife. It was her exact tone from the night she left, weary, disappointed, yet terrifyingly familiar. "David, don't be difficult," the Sarah voice said. "You always were so stubborn. Just unhook the chain. We can talk about everything, We can fix it. You're not her, I sobbed, backing into the bedroom. You're not anything. I can be whatever you need, the voice shifted. Now it was my mother. Davy, you're having a nightmare. Open the door so I can tuck you in. You're safe with me. The door slammed against the chain. Wham! The wood splintered. A gray, elongated finger poked through the gap. It didn't have a fingernail. It looked like a piece of wet charcoal. It wiggled, feeling the air of my apartment, tasting the silence. I ran. I retreated into my bedroom and slammed the door. I didn't just lock it. I threw my entire weight against my heavy mahogany dresser, sliding it across the floor until it blocked the entrance. I piled my weight against it, my feet bracing against the bed frame. I waited for the sound of the front door giving way. I waited for the heavy footsteps in the hall, but there was only silence. 5 minutes passed. 10. My muscles were screaming, cramped from the effort of holding the dresser. Then, 3 soft taps. Tap, tap, tap. They weren't at the front door. They were on my bedroom door, directly behind my head. David, my own voice said. Not a mimicry, but a perfect, flawless recording of my own throat. You forgot something. What? I gasped, unable to stop myself. The 4-inch gap, my voice whispered from the other side. You left the bedroom door open. You never saw me cross the hallway because I didn't use the floor. I looked up. In the corner of the ceiling above the dresser, the shadows were moving. They were thick, oily, and heavy. A gray, nubbed finger reached down, brushing the top of my head. I'm already inside, I said to myself. The police arrived at 7 a.m. after a neighbor reported a disturbing amount of screaming. They found me locked in the bathroom, clutching a kitchen knife so hard my palms were bleeding. The front door was wide open. The security chain had been snapped, not by force from the outside, but as if the metal had simply turned to dust. There were no signs of a struggle, no fingerprints. The Peephole Pro camera was found in the hallway, crushed under a weight that the forensics team said exceeded 2 tons. They told me it was a psychotic break. They pointed to the divorce, the isolation, the 3 a.m. phenomenon, where the brain is most susceptible to hallucinations. They gave me a prescription for lorazepam and told me to get some sun. I moved out that day. I didn't even pack. I left the furniture, the books, the memories. I live in a house now, in a suburb with families and barking dogs and leaf blowers that start at 7 a.m. I have 3 roommates. We leave the lights on in the kitchen all night. But the 28th of every month, the anniversary of that night, is different. I no longer use a security app. I don't want to see. But I still have my old phone, the one with the shattered screen. I keep it in a drawer, turned off. Every month, at exactly 3:22 a.m., the phone turns itself on. The screen flickers to life, showing a single notification from a deleted app. Motion detected in your old hallway. And if the house is quiet enough, if the roommates are asleep and the dogs are still, I hear a vibration coming from the floorboards. It's not a ringtone. It's the sound of 3 soft taps. And then my own voice, coming from the empty space beneath my bed, whispering, David, it's cold out here. Won't you let us back in? I thought leaving would end it. That was the logic everyone agreed on. The police, the doctor, even me. Once the shaking stopped and the medication dulled the edges of my thoughts. You remove the trigger and the response fades. That's how trauma works. At least, that's how it's supposed to work. I moved out of the apartment the same day the sun came up. I didn't pack. I didn't look back. I left the door unlocked behind me, as if daring the place to prove it had ever owned me. The building shrank in the rearview mirror, becoming just another slab of concrete among many. I told myself that whatever had happened there belonged to that hallway, that door, that exact configuration of walls and shadows. I was wrong. I didn't move somewhere quiet again. I made sure of that. I chose noise, proximity, witnesses. A shared house in a neighborhood that never truly slept. Cars passing at all hours, dogs barking, people arguing through thin walls. The kind of place where silence never lasts long enough to think. There were 3 of us in the house, no locked rituals, no cracked doors, no sight lines down dark hallways. I slept with the door closed for the first time in years. For a while it worked. I still woke up at night, but not always at the same time. Sometimes it was 2:40, sometimes closer to 4. My heart would race, then settle. Nothing would happen. No knocks, no voices, just the ordinary discomfort of a mind that hadn't healed yet. I started to believe the doctors were right. Until the first 28th. I didn't remember the date meaning anything until my body did it for me. I woke up tense, jaw clenched, fingers numb, as if I'd been holding on to something all night. The room was dark but alive with sound. One of my roommates snored softly through the wall. The refrigerator clicked in the kitchen. Somewhere outside, a car alarm chirped and died. Normal. I checked my phone. 3:21 a.m. I laughed quietly at myself. A short, breathless sound. Of course, my brain would latch on to numbers. Trauma loves patterns. The phone vibrated in my hand. Once. Not a notification. No sound. Just a physical tremor like the phone had flinched. The screen lit up on its own. 3:22 a.m. I threw the phone across the room before I could think. It hit the wall, slid down, and went dark. Nothing else happened. No voice, no knock, no shadow peeling itself out of a corner. I lay there until morning, waiting for something that never came. That should have been comforting. It wasn't. After that night, things didn't escalate. They eroded. Small things started going missing. Not objects. Moments. I would realize I was standing in a room without remembering how I'd gotten there. I would find browser tabs open on my laptop that I didn't remember searching for. Phrases typed into note apps and deleted again. Always incomplete. Always close to something. My roommates noticed before I did. "You talk in your sleep," one of them said over breakfast. "Not words, just sounds, like you're testing your voice." I shrugged it off. Everyone talks in their sleep, but I stopped using my name after that. Not consciously. I just avoided it. When introducing myself, I hesitated. When people said it out loud, it sounded slightly wrong, like they were mispronouncing something familiar, as if the name belonged to a version of me that had stepped out of frame. One night I caught myself standing in the hallway, staring at the seam where the wall met the ceiling. I didn't remember leaving my room. The corner looked darker than the rest of the house. Not shadowed, dense, like something had been pressed into that space and forgotten there. I blinked, and it was just a corner again. The dogs next door stopped barking soon after. Not all at once, one by one. Long stretches of silence where there should have been noise. I asked the neighbor about it. She said they'd been acting strange, sitting near walls, whining at empty rooms. On the second 28th, I stayed awake. I sat in the living room with every light on, the television playing something loud and meaningless. My roommates were out. The house felt too large without them, like it was waiting to be occupied properly. 3:22 came and went. Nothing happened. Relief washed over me so sharply it made me dizzy. Then the TV muted itself. Not off, just muted. In the sudden quiet, I heard breathing. Not mine. Slow, controlled, curious. It came from above the couch. I didn't look up. I already knew better. "David," my voice said. Not from the ceiling, from the kitchen. I stood so fast the room tilted. "No," I said. "You don't get to do that anymore." There was a pause, the kind that felt like consideration. "You brought witnesses," the voice said. That was smart. I grabbed my keys and left the house barefoot. I didn't stop running until I reached a diner 3 blocks away, fluorescent lights buzzing like insects overhead. I sat in a booth, shaking, hands wrapped around a mug of coffee I didn't remember ordering. I never slept in that house again. I don't live alone now. I don't live with people either. I stay in places where no one stays long. Hotels, short-term rentals, rooms paid for by the week. I don't unpack. I don't learn the layout. I don't let the space learn me. It doesn't matter. It doesn't need doors anymore. Sometimes, when I speak, my words come out half a second late, like they're being checked before they're released. Sometimes I hear my voice repeating sentences I haven't finished yet, and every 28 days, whether I'm asleep or not, I feel it settle closer, patient, listening, learning how to sound exactly right.